When you hear about Xenoblade Chronicles, chances are it's not a series you're immediately drawn to. Maybe it feels too anime for your taste, or maybe the UI seems rather overwhelming. The gameplay might even look way too complex at a first glance. I get that, because I've been there too. But let me tell you, this series has an almost magical ability to hook you in ways you do not expect. Those initial worries? They fade fast. What's left is a world you can't help but immerse yourself in and fall in love with. The Xenoblade franchise is one of the strongest in Nintendo's catalog, which is impressive considering it's relatively new to the scene. It's a franchise with an innate ability to hook anyone, regardless of whether you are a traditional JRPG fan or not. And with Xenoblade Chronicles X finally getting its long-awaited port to the Switch, and creators like Deebeegeek reigniting the community with his playthrough of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, now is the perfect time to give the series a chance to hook you. This is how Xenoblade Chronicles hooks you, and why you need to try it. Let's dive in. Xenoblade Chronicles began as a franchise that almost didn't release worldwide. The game was localized by Nintendo of Europe, not America, hence its British accents. And as much as Nintendo might want to deny it, it is highly likely that a fan movement named Operation Rainfall that focused around bringing certain JRPGs to the West had actually caused Nintendo to finally release it in the Americas as well. The series might have remained completely obscure if not for its inclusion in Super Smash Bros., introducing the protagonist, Shulk, to a global audience. Things began to change with Xenoblade Chronicles 2, a launch year title for the Nintendo Switch that brought new momentum to the series. Fans wanted to try out new games on their new systems, and that led to Xenoblade 2 being the most successful in the franchise. And with the release of Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition in 2020, fans could finally experience the franchise from the very beginning. By the time Xenoblade 3 arrived, it was clear the series had built a devoted following. Yet, it still feels like a hidden gem, even among Nintendo fans. For my own personal journey, I was intrigued by Xenoblade Chronicles X when it was released on the Wii U, but it did feel like way too large of a game for me to play. As a Nintendo fan at that point, I had never come close to playing a JRPG, and the sheer size of the game and all of the information on screen during a battle was far too much for me to seriously consider giving it a go. Then came Xenoblade 2, a game that I dismissed too easily. Not only did it continue to look confusing and large for me at the time, the game came across as very anime for me, and not in the best ways at the time. The design of Pyra and some of the action and clips I'd seen made me dismiss this game as something that just wasn't for me personally. However, I did have some friends that would tell me that these games were really great, however, and it wasn't until the lockdown that I finally gave Xenoblade Definitive Edition a try. I needed a game to sink into, knowing that I would be spending a lot of time at home. And it didn't just meet my expectations, it shattered them. I was hooked. Now let's talk about what makes Xenoblade Chronicles truly special. Gameplay and art style, they may seem divisive on an initial glance, but let's set those aside for now and focus on some of the real heart in these games. If you were to boot up Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition for the first time, even if you may be a little lost at the start, there are three major aspects that will hook you instantly. Those are the characters in the story, the music, and the world building and landscapes. I'm going to go through each of these and show you how Xenoblade is one of a kind in these aspects. Let's start with the story and the characters. I'm just going to be blunt. These games will break you, and in the best way possible. Few franchises can make you cry, laugh, and make you so emotionally invested like this one. Take Xenoblade 3 for example. As Deebeegeek recently tweeted, there's a moment in the game that is so emotionally devastating it stays with you long after the credits roll, and is arguably the strongest cutscene in Nintendo's history. Xenoblade Chronicles breaks down the stereotype that Nintendo games cannot tell a story. The characters are unforgettable, from Shulk's determination to Noah's sad demeanor and quiet strength. They're all crafted with such care and depth. This goes for the protagonists and all of the supporting cast as well. And yes, the British accents, they only make it better. They bring an authenticity that is rare in gaming, and they are so quotable. While some characters may fit into tropes that you may see in other video games or JRPGs, their execution is why they stand out from the crowd. The characters range from down to earth to over the top, even characters that seem one note on the surface level, like Ricky in the first game. They have depth to them as you experience and dig deeper into the game. I'll jump into some specific coverage of the characters when I delve into each of the games individually. And then, how can we forget? There's the music. This may sound extremely cheesy, but it's not just the soundtrack, it's actually quite an experience. What is widely considered one of the largest snubs in the history of the Game Awards was when Xenoblade Chronicles 3 did not win Best Soundtrack at the 2022 Game Awards. From insane orchestral rock in battles, to grand and memorable overworld themes, to powerful, emotional cutscene music, the music pulls at your heartstrings and elevates every moment. Honestly, one of my few true first interactions with Xenoblade was after E3 2017. In a trailer for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, they played the song Counterattack, which was so good it stuck with me without even having any interest in the game. As soon as I could, I, definitely legally, downloaded this song to my phone and would listen to it all the time. Allow me, now, to give you a few examples of songs from these games that show off the soundtrack's vast variety. Before we move on to the gameplay, let's not forget the landscapes that make up these worlds. The Xenoblade franchise has in a way always been held back by the hardware it is on. The first game released on the Wii in 2010 and later had a 3DS port, hardly was the strongest hardware of the early 2010s. Xenoblade Chronicles X released on the Wii U, and the rest of the games released on the Switch. Now, both the Switch and the Wii U essentially are hardware that is like a glorified Xbox 360. But, even with these limitations, these are some of the most breathtaking environments you'll ever explore. They're vibrant, massive, and invite you to lose yourself in their beauty. Some key areas that stand out to me are Uriah, Aerith Sea, Sator Marsh, Elais Highway, Leftharian Archipelago, and I could go on and on and on. I especially remember when Xenoblade Chronicles 3 came out. Not long after was the release of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Scarlet and Violet notoriously have some of the worst looking visuals on the Switch. It was very popular at the time for people to compare the landscapes, graphics, and environments of Xenoblade 3 to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, with one being an example of how bad the Switch hardware could be, whilst the other one was showcasing what magnificent things they could possibly achieve on the Switch hardware. And with these games releasing in the same year, comparisons were assured. This is even without mentioning the amazing world building these games have. The games take place in some spectacular locations, whether it is the two giant titans of the first game, the vast cloud sea of the second, or the broken down, patched together world of the third. These are worlds that will stay in your mind forever. I'll get down to the specific worlds in a little bit more detail when I cover each game individually later on in this video. Now, I won't sugarcoat it. Xenoblade's gameplay can look intimidating. The UI is dense, and the combat takes time to click. But once it does, it's an incredibly rewarding system that's absolutely worth your time. Let me break down for you quickly how it works. Xenoblade has a unique RPG combat system, which isn't turn-based, but also doesn't really fall under the category of an action game either. The games have you balancing between two main types of attacks. Automatic attacks that your characters will do over a short interval, and arts, which are player-controlled attacks or moves that are unique to each character or moveset. Arts aren't always available, and they take a moment to charge up, with the method of charging being different depending on the game. But each game balances this really well. This is what combat is at its core. Arts have different effects, and you can combo some arts into others across your party, and that leads to varied gameplay styles and different strategies. Now, this isn't going to be some major breakdown of the gameplay. I would just recommend trying and labbing out the games to learn more about the intricacies of the games and how to master them yourself. Instead, for me today, I just wanted to point out that while it looks overwhelming, at its core, it is reasonably simple to grasp. Ultimately, this is a pretty unique and foreign gameplay system, so unlike the characters' story, music, landscapes, and world building, the gameplay doesn't hook you immediately. The first game isn't as complex as the others in the franchise, so it is an easier start to get used to, whilst the second game ramps up the complexity quite a bit. The key is to push through the early hours, stay for the story and characters, and soon enough, the gameplay will hook you too. Once you are hooked, you will have some nail-biting fights and genuinely thrilling battles. Some battles against unique monsters are going to be so memorable and unique to each player. Now that I've covered the broader aspects of the series, allow me to briefly go into each of the three games individually, and what makes them special. Xenoblade 1 is where it all began. Its story is one of the best contained narratives in gaming, with top tier voice acting that makes every moment feel genuine. Now, although I won't say any plot spoilers or anything major like that, I will be talking about some locations and character names and traits. So if you want to go in 100% completely blind, then pause the video here and go and play the game. However, there will be no major spoilers for this game at all. So without further ado, let's get into Xenoblade Chronicles. Two giant titans fighting in an endless sea, the Bionis and the Mechonis. Their lifeless remains making up the world of Xenoblade Chronicles. Eons later, the people of the Bionis are under attack from a vile force known as the Mechon, which then sets in motion the rest of the game. The game will take you on a journey from this simple narrative through many emotional twists and turns that culminate in a masterfully told narrative come the final chapter. From the get-go, you are hooked around the mysteries of the game, and more specifically, the Monado, the red sword that is so iconic to this game. The narrative is told with subtle foreshadowing, and each scene is done in a way that nothing is without purpose. It's great to be with Xenoblade Chronicles' memorable cast of characters, whether it's the lovable meathead Rain or the stoic and inscrutable Duncan. Wait, that's not right. Characters like Ryan and Dumban, I should say, are extremely well handled. While they may fit into common character tropes, their execution is so well done that they surpass the expectations of their respective type of character. Shulk himself is one of the strongest protagonists in a JRPG. Shulk isn't the typical over-the-top protagonist, or he isn't the typical silent protagonist. Instead, Shulk is a modest, dorky, curious, mature, and emotional character that has a lot of depth. The English voice cast is superb as well, which includes Melia as voiced by Jenna Coleman, who actually plays Clara Oswald in the Doctor Who series. Some people may say that the battle quotes in the game can be a bit much, but they actually add to the charm of the franchise. It's also led to a whole lot of memes from using these quotes, and I am ever so grateful for that.
If nothing else, you must remember your family. That's Dunban over there.
The key areas where the original Xenoblade Chronicles does fall short is when you compare some of its gameplay aspects to later entries in the series. Whilst the combat being more simple does lead it to being easier to grasp and get into, it may leave a bit to be desired after you go and play Xenoblade 2 and 3. I'll go over this more when I cover 2 and 3, but those games feature gameplay systems that allow you to drastically vary your playstyle to your liking. Xenoblade 1 also has that, but to a much lesser extent. Some of the more intense larger boss fights and unique monster fights will feel more gratifying in the later games, where even more thought needs to go into the strategy of the gameplay. The other area of gameplay that falls short is the side content in this game. Whilst Xenoblade 1 has serviceable side quests, the side content in 2 and especially 3 are so strong that you can find side content that feels like it has more substance than the main quest at times. While Xenoblade 1 has some shortcomings in these areas, it is an absolute gem of a game that can touch your heart, and they should not hold you back from playing it.
Burning Sword!
What could be considered the black sheep of the series, Xenoblade 2 is divisive. But let's dive into Xenoblade Chronicles 2. The world of Orest is made up of a large sea of clouds with many great titans living upon it. Humans and all life rely on the titans to live. However, the titans are starting to die out and living space is becoming scarce. At the center of all the titans lies the giant world tree, and supposedly atop the world tree lies Elysium, an endless land where humanity can live in prosperity. A young salvager named Rex and an uber-powerful girl named Pyra make it their goal to reach Elysium and save Orest. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 probably contributes the most to some of the stereotypes the series has. And sure, the game is very absurd at times, and the combat is notoriously poorly explained, which I'll get into in a second. However, under some of these issues on the surface, is still a fantastic game, just perhaps a little bit harder to initially get into. What many people don't realize is that the key issues that fans from outside the fanbase like to comment on don't even make up anywhere near the majority of the game. Beneath that surface is the same emotional depth and compelling storytelling that you experience with the first game. Characters like Nia are fantastically written, and others like Pyra have so many mysteries attached that as the game goes on, they become more and more fascinating as things begin to reveal themselves, at which point you become so attached. The villains as well stand out as a group that has so many people engrossed by how they are portrayed. Furthermore, this game is genuinely kinda hilarious at times. It has a slightly different sense of humor than the other two, but it is absolutely peak comedy in its own right. As a testament to how well this game is written at times, a character who comes across as purely comic relief at the start, like Zeke, expands his character so much that by the end of the game, he's so much more than just comic relief. One area that is quite a mixed bag is the voice acting, unfortunately. I think predominantly the voice actors themselves are really solid, but the issue comes in how this game was rushed. Supposedly the English voice cast had very little or very poor voice direction and had to rush their lines. You can actually tell the delivery and cadence of the lines do improve as the game reaches its later chapters, supposedly as the cast get more familiar with their roles. Let's talk about some of the gameplay mechanics before we move on. Arguably the worst thing about Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is its tutorial system. It is comfortably the worst tutorial system I've ever seen in a video game, and it does make it harder for the gameplay to click with you. I would highly recommend using a guide or asking someone for help in understanding how things work, because that's the thing. Once gameplay clicks with you in this game, it is nothing short of phenomenal. The combat has so many intricacies, and the ability to use a variety of blades helps keep the gameplay fresh and engaging. Also, the combo system this game uses that culminates in some extremely satisfying chain attacks makes the learning curve worth it. The game, admittedly, has other quality of life issues, specifically around the map and menu UI, but considering the amazing music, the phenomenal world, all the emotional beats, and overall the completely special experience this game may offer you, it's absolutely worth pushing through those issues and seeing the game through to the end, where some of those issues can then be overlooked. And despite it being, in my opinion, the weakest in the franchise, so many fans will tell you this is their favorite game of all time. An experience like that just should not be ignored. In what I feel is the perfect blend between Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 2, in my opinion, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is a masterpiece. Let's get into this must-experience title. In the land of Ionios, people fight to live, and they live to fight. Two warring nations, Keves and Agnes, fight constantly in an endless war. The soldiers of these nations, the people of Ionios, have only 10 years to live. Born out of cradles, 10 years later they return to their respective queen. That is if they can make it to the 10 years, without losing their life on the battlefield. Fighting is all they know. This game is one of the most intriguing premises and a way of life that you cannot wait to wrap your head around. In that way, it hooks you from the opening cutscene. The desire for the player to know why their life has to be this way is paramount when playing this game. This game is probably the darkest of the three. Whilst tonally it matches the first game more than the second, it is still even a step more depressing than the first. And that is exemplified by the main protagonists, Noah and Mio. Similar to Shulk and Rex, who want to fix and discover why their world is the way it is, Noah does as well. However, unlike Shulk and Rex, Noah has this constant underlying and reserved despisal for what the world is. This is to the point that Noah never truly seems happy, rather always just trying to find meaning in life. And Mio is a reminder to everyone what it must be like to be at the end of your time, trapped with no way out of these cruel restrictions. If you are someone who has ever struggled with identity, finding the purpose of yourself or meaning to your own life, this game is going to hit like a truck and then some. I would recommend bringing a box of tissues along with you when you play this game. It's not just Noah and Mio as well. Tyon, Uni, Senna, and Lance are comfortably one of the best supporting class in all of gaming. They each have genuine insecurities and vulnerabilities that are well developed, and they find strength within each other. This game does this so well that when shit hits the fan, it hurts the player so much more because the connection and understanding of all of your party is so strong and deep. Not to mention that this series returns to form with some spectacular voice acting. Every single voice actor is so good, and they do not shy away from the Britishness of it all, as emphasized by my girl Uni.
Never do that again!
Come on! You're already soaking wet anyway. What difference does it make?
The difference is, you're an asshole. What's nothing difference?
Perhaps some criticisms that people have over the game revolve around the landscapes in 3. 3 is still a beautiful game, no doubt about that, but it does lack the scale of living atop these large, alive titans that the previous 2 games have. And that does lose its charm a little bit, but the world does make up for it in many other ways, many of which would be considered spoilers. Some people aren't the biggest fans of the villains in this game, especially those who absolutely adore the villains in Xenoblade 2, which is subjective of course, but I personally don't have an issue in that aspect. One of the best highlights from 3 is the actual gameplay itself. The game has the best side content hands down of the main series, and has the most intuitive UI and the best quality of life instances, which arguably you could say should be expected from the latest game. The combat is a huge shining point in this game for me. The combat is much easier to initially get into than it is in 2, but remains the same depth and customization. It even improves upon this by having the hero system, which is similar to the Great Blade system of the second game, minus annoying gacha mechanics. Chain attacks also have heavy importance in this game like in 2. The combat and experience is just seamless. Finally, I want to briefly touch up on Xenoblade Chronicles X, the Wii U game that was released in 2015. With Xenoblade Chronicles X finally coming to the Switch now as a definitive edition, it's the perfect time to experience this gem. Supposedly, while its story takes a backseat, its exploration and side content are some of the best you'll find. You may notice I haven't talked a lot about Xenoblade X in this video, and that is simply because I just haven't played it yet. I cannot wait till March. It is going to absolutely absorb my life. If you're watching this after the release of X, I've probably heavily invested time into this game. Whilst it came out technically as the second release in the franchise, it is disconnected to the main trilogy, so whether you play this one or not, you can play it in release order or really any time you like. Although, be warned, while the franchise is known for its next level gripping storytelling, apparently this game does not really feature that, and should instead be enjoyed if you love the side quests and stuff like that from Xenoblade 2 and 3. Xenoblade Chronicles is a series that defies expectations. Despite the misconceptions, it's a franchise that deserves your attention. Start with Xenoblade 1, let it hook you, and see where the journey takes you. The truth is, even with how it can be so gripping, it will not hook everyone. For some people, things will just not click, and that's okay. However, given how much this franchise has connected with people, it would be a right shame to not at least give it a go, and let the game immerse you. If you already are a huge Xenoblade fan, what is your favourite game and why? And what was the moment where the series hooked you in? I don't expect this video to do very well as it covers a relatively niche franchise, but I hope you were able to get something out of it. I'd appreciate it, if you did, to like this video so it can help go around the algorithm and hopefully fall into the hands of somebody else who could get something out of it as well. I'll leave it at that. I would hate to have this video linger in the endless now. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all later.